Okay, so we're just going to look at some basic physiology of pregnancy and birth that's related to yoga. And I'm going to start with one of the most common hormones that is produced during pregnancy. And it's called relaxin. And it's a special pregnancy hormone that softens and relaxes all of the connective tissue, the cartilage, and the ligaments that support joints to prepare the pelvis to really reshape to prepare for an easier delivery. It allows for the strong ligaments of the uterus to become a little bit more lax so that they can expand. So as the baby grows, the uterus can also grow, taking shape. So the relaxin, however, though, it doesn't just affect the uterus and the pelvis. It actually affects all of the joints in the body, making every joint in your body less stable. So very excessive and deep stretching can pull on the ligaments and cause injury. So it's really important to think about stabilization of the joints and engaging the muscles around the joints. Let's talk about the pelvis a little bit. All right, so I brought some pictures for you. Okay. So the pelvis, it's shaped like a funnel with a curved canal, and it's made up of 4 bones. All right, so we've got the sacrum, we've got our 2 ilium, with the ilium, the ischium, which are the ishiotuberosities, the sit bones, and then the pubic symphysis. And then we look at the pelvis, there's the pelvic inlet, and then there's the pelvic outlet. Okay, so the pelvic inlet is the rounded entrance to the pelvic canal at the top. Okay, so you can see that's coming from above, that picture. And the widest diameter of this is from hip bone to hip bone. The pelvic outlet is the opening at the base, which the baby will pass and be born. Okay, so its widest part is from the pubic bone to the tailbone. During the pregnancy, the pelvic joints become much more mobile, and because of the relaxin, there's a real softening of the ligaments, allowing a much greater expansion for the pelvic joints. So the pubic symphysis, back over here, the pubic symphysis and then the sacroiliac joints, these little right in here, it can become really unstable during pregnancy because of that relaxin, and can create a lot of discomfort. So one of the gifts that practicing specific yoga postures will give is to create more stability in the pelvis. There are practices like when we're taking a wide leg seated pose, taking the legs too wide can overstretch these ligaments, can overstretch the pubic symphysis. Too much forward bending, too much hip opening can overstretch the sacroiliac. So it's really important that your student is always working in a pain-free range of motion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does the relaxin prevent the student from feeling the pain?
No.
So they would notice if they were overstretching?
They might not notice until after the fact, until after they overstretch. What they might notice is that, oh wow, I am feeling like I can go a little bit deeper into this pose. And or they might notice that they are less stable.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't necessarily feel the pain right then. It's almost, it's similar, I think, in a regular yoga class. Let's say it's like you're in like a hot yoga class where you can easily stretch yourself because of the heat, and then you can easily overstretch yourself, but you don't feel it until after.
Similar to me all the time.
With your hypermobility, yeah. So back to the pelvis. So there was a theory that was developed by a midwife. Her name was Jean Seddon, and she developed a theory called optimal fetal position. And so what was found was that that the mother's position and movement can influence the way that the baby actually lay in the womb in the final weeks of pregnancy, and that labor can become much more difficult if that baby's not in that optimal fetal position. Okay, so optimal fetal position, optimal fetal position is it's called left occiput anterior. Okay, and so I'm going to use your, what is this guy? Seal?
It's a stuffed seal.
Your stuffed seal as a representation. And so optimal fetal position is head down, okay, back to belly, and hands to heart. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you think what the point is with the optimal fetal position is, so head down, so the baby's head is, right now it's in that pelvic inlet. And then when the baby is about to be born, within days, that baby drops down and actually the head turns just a little bit so that it goes now into the pelvic outlet. And then, because that's the widest part, so it actually has to turn to go through. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if the baby is, it's called left occiput posterior, okay, which means that it's actually the back is to the belly is to belly now, then that baby's going to have to turn 180 degrees and then turn to get out. So it's a lot more work for a baby and a lot more work for mama, and can result in a much more difficult and painful labor, and they call it sometimes back labor. And so the point being is that certain yoga postures, the theory is that there are ways to work to help encourage that optimal fetal positioning. So anterior pelvic tilt, which naturally starts to happen as the baby gets bigger and the belly starts to come forward, there gets that little sway in the back. That is said to help encourage optimal fetal position. That's said to encourage that head down back to belly. Where posterior tilt, where the tailbone kind of gets tucked under, maybe, let's say, like if you were someone who sat on the couch all day, you kind of close off that space, and so the baby's less likely to go into optimal fetal position. That's the theory. And so, in yoga class, something like Majarasana that we do, that is said to really help encourage that optimal fetal position, because you keep dropping into that anterior pelvic tilt.
So a lot of back bends in early stages of pregnancy?
Well, throughout pregnancy, and really it's about maintaining the neutral pelvis, and not trying to overtuck the tailbone or around the spine, because you want that space. You don't want to restrict space for the uterus. So when the baby, when the pelvis is a little bit more anterior tilted, gravity may encourage the baby's spine towards the mom's belly, which is again optimal for childbirth. The other, so optimal fetal position, so we've got back to belly. The other way that babies, you might have heard, is if they're a breech baby, which can either be feet first, and in that case, very rarely, if ever, delivered vaginally. That's when a lot of people will have a C-section if they're going to have a breech baby, or bum first, which can be delivered vaginally, but again, very uncomfortable for the mother and not recommended unless a woman has already had a vaginal birth safely with baby with optimal fetal position. Otherwise, they're going to do a C-section.
Interesting.
Okay. All right, so the uterus. Okay, so the uterus is, it's the main organ that is involved in pregnancy. So in a non-pregnant woman, this this hollow muscular organ is about the size and shape of a pear, and then it grows throughout the pregnancy, really filling up, starting as an organ of the pelvis and moving up into an organ of the abdominal cavity. It grows several times its size. So again, the uterus, it's supported by the pelvic floor with 6 strong ligaments that run from the lower half of the uterus and attach to the pelvis. And these ligaments brace and support the uterus. So during the pregnancy, the ligaments become more lax to allow the uterus more movement. So why do they become more lax? Do you remember?
Because of relaxin.
Because of relaxin, exactly. But this relaxing of those ligaments, they can cause a lot of discomfort and pain in the groin area. So sudden movement or engaging the muscles in the lower torso can cause discomfort. So resting can help relax those muscles and ligaments, and will usually help those sensations dissipate. But that's also why, doing practices like Sahajroli, mudra, where we're strengthening the pelvic floor, even just like the Kegels, can really help alleviate or prevent that kind of discomfort as well.
And Kegels are basically the same as mula band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're contracting the everything really for the Kegels. Okay. The abdominal wall. Okay. So the rectus muscles. Let's see if we've got a picture. So the rectus muscles, they're long, slender muscles that are located along the center of the abdominal wall. They run vertically from the end of the sternum and the lower ribs to the pubic bone, so all the way down. The right and left rectus muscles are separated by a fibrous connective tissue that's about 1/2 inch wide, and it's called the linea alba. Okay, so it's this line right here that runs up and down the belly. And it really needs to have a certain amount of elasticity to accommodate the growing belly. However, as the belly grows and the abdominal stretch, they do become weaker, which can result in lower back pain or diastasis recti. Okay, so diastasis recti is the separation of the linea alba. It's the fibrous piece of tissue which softens and stretches around the growing belly, causing it to weaken, stretch, and separate. So this can happen in the 2nd or 3rd trimester. Strong abdominals and lower back muscles, as well as good posture, are going to help prevent this from occurring. And if the abdominal muscles are really tight, it can make it even more difficult for the baby to get into an optimal position for childbirth. So the key really is moderation, and poses that engage abdominal muscles